Some places are forgotten by history, not because they were erased, but because they were cursed. Cursed by something so dark, so ancient, that time itself feared to remember it. But there are those who are drawn to the shadows, who seek out the buried secrets of the past, unaware that what they uncover may never let them leave. This is the story of one such man, a historian obsessed with finding a forgotten village. A man who will soon discover that some places are better left alone. The year is 1994. Daniel Hayes, a 36-year-old historian, is driving through the winding back roads of rural Pennsylvania. His car rattles over the dirt roads, passing through miles of uninhabited land. Overgrown fields stretch into the horizon, broken only by the occasional crumbling farmhouse. As he drives, we hear his inner monologue. "I've been searching for years, since I was a boy, really. A village that shouldn't exist, a place hidden not by geography, but by time. Black Hollow, a name that sounds like something out of a fairy tale, but it's real. I know it's real. My grandfather's diary led me here. I can feel it." We see flashbacks to Daniel's childhood, a young boy no more than 5, standing in an attic holding a dusty leather-bound journal. His grandfather, a stern but kindly man, tells him stories about Black Hollow, a place where strange things happened long ago. The journal contains tales of death, madness, and a village that vanished without a trace. Daniel's childhood was difficult. His parents died in a mysterious accident when he was young, and he was raised by his grandmother. The whispers in his small town were that his parents had been cursed, though no one ever spoke about what that truly meant. His only escape was the stories his grandfather told him, stories that always seemed a little too real. As he grew older, Daniel's fascination with Black Hollow became an obsession. He became a historian, specializing in lost places, forgotten histories, and the supernatural. But no matter how many forgotten villages he found, none was Black Hollow, until now. A recently uncovered map, hidden in an old archive, points him to an isolated area in Pennsylvania, far off the beaten path. This is his first real lead in years. As Daniel nears his destination, a cold dread begins to settle over him. The landscape around him grows wilder, the trees taller and darker, their branches twisted like gnarled hands. He feels as though he's being watched. His grip tightens on the steering wheel. Flashbacks reveal more of Daniel's backstory. His family's history is steeped in mystery. His grandmother often spoke of strange occurrences. Daniel dismissed them as old wives' tales, but there was always a part of him that wondered if there was more to it. His grandfather's sudden death shortly after handing over the journal always seemed too coincidental. The entity that haunts Daniel's bloodline is ancient. Known only as the Forgotten One, it is a being that feeds on memory, erasing its victims from the world and binding their souls to its domain. Its origins date back to the early 1600s, when Daniel's ancestors, desperate for power and knowledge, attempted to summon a being from beyond the veil. The ritual went horribly wrong. Instead of a benevolent spirit, they brought forth something dark, something malevolent. The Forgotten One attached itself to their bloodline, devouring each generation slowly. The village of Black Hollow was the site of that original ritual. After the curse took hold, the village was wiped from history. Its inhabitants disappeared, their existence erased as though they had never lived. Daniel is the last of his line, and the Forgotten One has been waiting for him. After hours of driving, Daniel finally arrives at the location marked on the map. But there's nothing there, just an empty field, overgrown with weeds and wildflowers. Confused, Daniel gets out of his car and starts to walk. The air feels unnaturally still, and the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the ground. It has to be here. It has to be. His voice trembles. He walks deeper into the field, pushing aside the tall grass. And then he sees it, a faint outline of buildings, barely visible through the fog. It's as if the village is hidden behind a veil, not entirely in this world. Daniel steps forward, and suddenly the landscape changes. Black Hollow stands before him, a village frozen in time. The houses are intact but ancient, their wooden walls covered in vines and moss. The silence is deafening. Daniel steps into the village, his heart pounding. As he walks, he hears faint whispers, like voices carried on the wind. They call his name, soft and distant. "Hello?" he calls out, but there is no response. The temperature drops rapidly, and Daniel pulls his coat tighter around him. He enters the first house he sees. Inside, everything is covered in a thick layer of dust. Furniture is still in place, as though the inhabitants left in a hurry. But there are no signs of life. No bodies, no bones. It's as though the village was abandoned in an instant. As Daniel spends more time in Black Hollow, strange things begin to happen. At first, it's subtle. The feeling of being watched, objects slightly out of place, the sound of footsteps behind him when no one is there. But soon, the manifestations become more aggressive. One night, Daniel is awoken by the sound of scratching. He looks down at his arms to find deep, fresh scratches, 3 long, parallel lines, as though made by claws. He searches the house, but there's no one there. He begins to see shadowy figures at the edge of his vision, always just out of reach, disappearing the moment he turns his head. The whispers grow louder, more distinct. They're calling his name, urging him to go deeper into the village. And always, he feels the presence of something, watching. Daniel's dreams are plagued by nightmarish visions. He sees his ancestors, their faces twisted in agony, their eyes hollow, their mouths silently screaming. They reach out to him, begging for help. But each time he reaches back, they are pulled into the shadows by an unseen force. The more Daniel uncovers, the more he realizes that the village itself is a trap. The Forgotten One has lured him here, just as it lured his ancestors. The village was never erased from history. It was hidden, waiting for the last of the Hayes bloodline to return. One stormy night, Daniel discovers a hidden entrance beneath the village church. It leads to an underground chamber, a place where dark rituals were once performed. The walls are lined with ancient symbols, and in the center of the room is a stone altar, stained with blood. As Daniel approaches the altar, the temperature drops further, and the air becomes thick and oppressive. The ground trembles beneath his feet, and from the shadows, the Forgotten One emerges. It is a writhing mass of darkness, constantly shifting and changing shape. Its eyes glow a deep, malevolent red, and its voice is a chorus of whispers and screams. Daniel feels his mind unraveling as the entity speaks to him. You are the last. The bloodline ends here. Join me, or be consumed. Daniel is paralyzed with fear, but something in him fights back. He realizes that the only way to stop the curse is to sacrifice himself. He begins the ritual, using the knowledge passed down through his family. The entity screeches in fury as Daniel chants the ancient words, but something goes wrong. Instead of banishing the Forgotten One, the ritual begins to merge their souls. Daniel feels the entity entering him, taking over his body, his mind. He screams in agony as his consciousness is consumed by darkness. Daniel's face now calm, but something is off. His eyes glow faintly red, and a twisted smile spreads across his face. He steps out of the chamber, now fully possessed by the Forgotten One. Some places are forgotten for a reason. Some curses can never be broken. The village of Black Hollow remains, waiting for the next soul to stumble into its web, and the Forgotten One now walks in the skin of its latest victim.